Good morning and welcome to Criminal Justice Insider. I'm Babz Rawls-Ivy.
And I'm Jeff Grant.
Hey, and we're sponsored by the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
Now more than ever.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Hi, Babz. How you doing?
We actually don't have a guest in studio today.
I know.
We had guests, and then one by one.
we got flat left. What's that called? Indian? I can't remember from elementary school.
I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
I know people ditched us.
Nah, it's all right. They each had their very
No, they had their
them.
commitment. So
Yeah, we love them.
we'll get them again. They'll be on again.
Andrew Kaplan and Lynn Springer were supposed to be with us, and we'll invite them again
because they've been on this criminal justice journey with us. So. In lots of various capacities. So it would be nice to sort of, have a conversation with them about, what it looks like for them doing this work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it gives us an opportunity to catch up a little bit on what's going on and maybe talk about some of the shows ahead because we have a lineup of guests coming up over the next couple of months already.
We've got a bunch of shows under us. And you can find them on the New Haven Independent site, and I believe the Community Foundation site too.
Yeah, and on SoundCloud under just Google, I guess, or search Criminal Justice Insider.
Yeah, you can find us there. So you can go back and listen to a year's worth of shows.
Yep. And
we've had some heavy hitters from gubernatorial wannabes.
Pulitzer Prize winners,
Pulitzer Prize winner authors, and everything in between,
and staunch advocates out there for progressive reform,
and all walks of life.
One of our guests. This is a good time to kind of reminisce and update about what's going on with some of our guests that we know about.
Okay, good.
That'd be great. And among other things, our guest a few months ago, James Foreman, Pulitzer Prize winner.
Yes.
He's going to actually be preaching
in Westport, right?
In Westport, right?
I saw that.
Yeah. Because I'm a member of the Westport Weston Clergy Association, and so sometimes I participate in their services and things like that. This isn't a service as much as it is a kind of a public gathering.
Yes, the MLK celebration.
Yeah, exactly.
They've been doing it for what a good while.
Yeah, a bunch of years.
At least a decade, more than a decade.
Right. So it's on that Sunday at 3:00 at the Westport Country Playhouse, and the keynote is James Foreman. So we're very happy to hear about that. He's I guess he's been on the book tour trail.
Yeah,
somewhat.
He's been around talking.
Yeah.
So, and his day gig is at the Yale Law School.
Yeah.
So
and that this week our friend Scott Semple has left office as Commissioner of Corrections.
Where's he going? That's what I want to know.
I think that we're gonna. I don't know the answer to that. I haven't spoken to him in a bit, but I would imagine that great things are ahead. He's certainly a national name, and has done great reform work here in Connecticut. And it wouldn't.
I wish he would have ran for governor. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. He's
and I'm not talking behind his back. I said it to his face. I was like, you should be governor.
Yeah, he's bipartisan in his approach. I mean, he's a Republican who was appointed to that high-profile position.
Well, he's one of the two Republicans I know that I actually like.
Yeah, right. So, there were a bunch of going-away parties for him throughout the criminal justice community in Connecticut, and a bunch of people reached out to him all kinds of different ways, including. I think I did yesterday, actually, and he's the type of guy who gets back to every single person who reaches out to him. So, hats off to him, and we wish him all the best. And the new Corrections Commissioner elect, Roland Cook, who comes to us from Utah. We've been in contact with him.
So what's his story? Do you know? I know you did. I know you did some research. What's his story?
Yeah, well, we reached out to him and we've communicated with him, and he's told us somewhere in the next month or two he's going to be our guest here. So we've left a couple of dates open for him. And a reformer in Utah. And Utah, I would say you probably couldn't find a place that's less like Connecticut if you tried. But you know, they have their but it's certainly a you know, a beautiful place, a spiritual place, and probably different than the way we practice it in a lot of ways.
Very white place.
But I guess you can say that. But are we okay, Harry? Am I? Oh, sorry.
No, he'll be fine. Harry, just come in and act like you don't see him.
Thanks, Harry. Yeah.
Harry's invisible.
Yeah, he's like the Dark Knight there. So, he's done. I think he was their corrections commissioner, or the head of whatever they call it out there.
I got to do some research and see if there's any bad reviews.
No. But he came up through the ranks. I've done some research. He came up through the ranks, much the way Scott Semple did. You know, from correction officer to warden and right through the ranks.
Okay.
And I guess he was in their system for over 25 years.
All right.
And what I'm really I'm very, very happy about is that Connecticut apparently did a national search to find a new corrections commissioner, rather than just promoting someone from the ranks, which might not have been a bad thing. But I think that...
Well, you know, you want some fresh thinking. Some fresh eyes and fresh take on Connecticut. Because I think if you're here and you come through, you're used to here, right?
Yeah.
So you're a little bit myopic.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that it would have been terrible for the criminal justice community here had we not invested in someone who is a progressive reformer, and it appears we did.
Okay.
And you know, it's always a difficult thing when there's a changeover of administration. Yeah. And a lot of the notables over the last 8 years and maybe even decades, you know, Mike Lawler is no longer our Undersecretary for Criminal Justice Policy and Planning, a guest of ours.
Oh, where is he going?
As far as I know,
he was an early guest, right?
No, he was only here about 4 or 5 months ago.
Oh.
Yeah, but as far as I know, he is teaching at University of New Haven.
So he is out of politics?
For now. I mean, you know, this seems to be kind of fluid in this state, you know, so I'm not sure what out of means.
I know.
I don't know.
I mean, you get a call. Get the call.
But you know, we're certainly grateful to Mike, and I think that it's a little bit difficult right now. Obviously, the state is running at a huge deficit, and so when the money's not there, it's difficult to move forward progressive reform. There've been a lot of turnovers of executive directors and heads of criminal justice nonprofits and other justice-related nonprofits, health and wellness nonprofits. A big turnover in the last year, and now a turnover in government. So we'll see what that means in terms of institutional memory, and whether or not you know, how we maintain continuity for the good things, and people who have the roadmap of kind of how we got to where we are now, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. I know one of the great historians. There's a bunch of great historians, but one of the historians, at least from the formerly incarcerated person nonprofit side, was one of our guests, Lorenzo Jones.
I was just going to ask, how's he doing from the Catal?
Yeah, from Catal.
Yeah, I get their newsletters.
Well, Catal's going great guns. You know, I
try to stay up with everybody. It's hard to stay with all these people.
Yeah. You know, I don't quite know exactly what they're doing, but they're going great guns here in Connecticut and in New York and probably some other places too. And you know, we'd love to have them back on the show again. Well, I'll reach out to Lorenzo and Gabriel.
Yeah, we'd like to hear what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, they're certainly in a different place than they were. I mean, I would say Lorenzo was on, I don't know, over a year ago already.
Yeah. Yeah, because we've been at this for a good while now.
Yeah, we celebrated our 1 year anniversary show, but this is probably 15,
I know, and
16
you
months.
reminded me, because I was like, what?
Yeah. No cake, no party.
I was like, what? 1 year? Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of an update on Mike. We are just Commissioner-elect Cook, if you're listening in this morning, we've left a couple of dates open for you, and we'll reach out to you in a couple of weeks once you get settled.
Yeah.
And that would be great to have him. Let me see. There's a new report out from a coalition of reentry people around the state, led by Andrew Clark, another one of our guests at the Institute for Municipal and Regional Planning at CCSU, and the reentry roundtables. You know, we had Beth Hines and Sue Gunderman in here not that long ago, and
didn't somebody move on to another position?
Sue did.
Yes.
Yeah, she's now, I guess, the either executive director or interim director of the Hartford Reentry Center.
Okay.
Which was actually funded, I guess, by the Hartford Foundation, and maybe it's within the mayor's office in Hartford. So at a time of economic insecurity, they're doubling down on supporting reentry people there, and that's a wonderful thing to see. And so this report was sent to me by Rob Hebert, who is the chairman of the Bridgeport Reentry Roundtable. Sent to me and everyone else. It wasn't sent to me. I'm not special. He sent it to everyone who's a member, and it's an exhaustive report of recommendations on criminal justice change that they're presenting, I guess, to the legislature and CJPAC and probably to the new Lamont administration. So a lot of work's been put in, and some of it behind the scenes, and some of it is kind of vocal out there. And hopefully, what it means is that we're going to have a real partnership between the Lamont administration and a legislature who's going to struggle to find the funding needed to be able to use justice reinvestment money and other direct money to reinvigorate our criminal justice nonprofit community that has struggled with with ever decreasing government funding over the last couple of years.
Are we getting a sense that criminal justice is still on the forefront? Because things come and go. Like next year we will shift from criminal justice, and our attentions will be on, I don't know, paint in schools or something.
Well, I think the short answer to that is yes. I don't know that criminal justice is the biggest driver in this state right now, as much as economic reform is, and trying to get the state solvent and find a way to no longer be kind of a poor stepchild to our neighbors in New York and Massachusetts. And that economic vitality, I think anybody who's enlightened would agree that the only way for it to really thrive and to work is for to raise the ceiling and raise the floor. I mean, what we need is corporations and similar entities to be incentivized to be here and to have healthy businesses here and invest here, but at the same time, the least privileged among us, whether they have criminal justice issues or simply are victims of poverty or other forms of kind of oppression of or lack of opportunities, if we're not providing for them at the same time, then all we're doing is compounding the problem.
I think you're right.
So I think everybody kind of understands that, and I also think that everybody understands that there's no one more important than anyone else in this kind of an ecosystem. And certainly, we've had people come on the program and have talked about that the mayor of a city is no more important than the person who hauls the trash. If the trash hauler doesn't show up for 2 or 3 weeks, it becomes a pretty ugly place.
And that's true.
And we see now at a time of government shutdown on the national level that it's just starting to seep into places where people will really feel it.
Well, yeah, listen, this is why all politics is local.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you think that what's happening is the only thing you should be concerned about is your congressional leadership. Nope.
Yep.
Because that stuff happens on the local level. I am pleased to see that the governor, has he been sworn in yet?
I think.
Wouldn't it be like now?
Yeah, now. I'm not sure which day.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I will go to the ball though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, maybe we should give you a call-in number today. What do you do?
No, we're not.
Oh, no, you don't want to take calls?
I hate calls. You know how I feel about calls. So anyway, I am heartened to see that the governor has walked in talking about criminal justice and started having these conversations.
Yeah.
New governor.
Yeah, I think that was very smart on his part.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that for a Democratic governor, but to come out of a place like Greenwich, and you know, he's a button down type of guy, you know, very successful, and for him to be putting criminal justice as one of his primary issues, I think speaks a lot about not only his understanding of the issues, but certainly his understanding of where his voter base is, and also his, you know, empathy for what's going on, certainly in our inner city communities and probably our suburbs and rural communities with the opioid crisis and things like that.
Yeah, that seems to be still in the news cycle, the opioid issue.
More,
you know.
More really. I mean, there's a lot of funding coming into that sector. So even though direct funding hasn't come into criminal justice programs in a big way in the state for a while, that's not true in some of the microsectors. Like there is money for housing, there's been money for employment, although not a lot of enlightened legislation at this point in terms of what Fernando and Rosa were talking about.
You know, I'm fascinated by that conversation that they had. And people are discussing it now on the New Haven Independent. Yeah. Because the article is up about what we talked about. They were our last guests, right?
Yeah. They were
our last guest of the year.
December 21st. They were here.
So they were here and they were talking about, in particular, banning the box, not just for employment, but also for housing. Yeah. And so there's a robust conversation going on at the New Haven Independent about, I mean, all kinds of people are weighing in.
So, you know,
lengthy discussion.
You know, when it came up, I have Google alerts for like 100 things, you know, because
of course you do.
Of course I do, right? So I'm up like reading from 4 to 5:30 every morning.
Yes, you are.
But by the way, folks, if you want to know how to get up to date on all this stuff, just start reading this stuff for a couple of years. And so it popped up, you know, ban the box for housing, and I said to myself, well, that's really a great idea. I said, that's a fantastic idea. So I clicked the link. I go, wait a second. Oh, that was on our show. I can't believe it.
That's so funny.
I know.
He's like, that's a good idea. We should talk about that. Oh, we've already talked about that.
That might be a senior moment. I'm not sure.
No, but that's funny because we talked about so many things, and it's funny that piece became the focus of the. But I'm encouraged by it. I mean, people feel some kind of way about, you know, people. This is the thing that when I read these kinds of stories, Jeff, is that people believe that criminals are forever criminals. Like no matter if it was some youthful indiscretion or you did something 20 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever it is, they just imagine that you are just still committing crimes and that you just, if you given the opportunity, you will just commit more crimes. They don't. I don't understand.
You know, there's such a robust conversation around this. I don't know if you remember this, but almost a year ago, of course you remember it, we had some people from the New Haven women's resettlement group.
Yes.
Resettlement group.
I remember them.
I'm getting the name wrong. It was Jackie Lucabello and Amy Smoyer.
Yes. Oh, you have a good memory. I can see them in my mind's eye, but I would not have remembered their names.
Look, I couldn't remember what was on the last show. But that conversation was kind of started here. And so the intersection of the defendant and the victims and how those people all find ways of restoring families and renewing families and living under one roof if they choose to, or supporting their children if they're not living under one roof and finding adequate housing for them. Big problem.
Yeah, it is.
Big.
And I don't, with the exception of pedophiles, and I leave them out of the conversation because I think that's its own conversation that can't be lumped in with, your typical around the corner drug dealer. I think that requires a different kind of focus, I think.
Yeah, but in this state, even that reform is on the table as to what constitutes someone who should be on the sex offender registry.
Right. And we have not had anybody on our show talking about that yet.
No, but
I don't know if I could, but I'd be open to, depending on who it is. I think it couldn't be. I don't think I could have a conversation with somebody who committed that crime, but I could have the conversation with people who work in that area. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I know the person who is probably the leading advocate in the state for that change. And of course, everyone has reasons they get into this kind of advocacy. It touches them in some way.
Yeah. And
in this particular case, I think what happened is that their son was locked up, and now has no way of reintegrating into society in any elegant way whatsoever. I mean, if there's anybody who is any class of person who finds it most difficult to reintegrate from prison or from prosecution, it certainly would be that.
Oh, I agree.
Oh, yeah.
I agree. And I'm not, because there's a whole lot to this. Like when I see young people, like if you're 17 and you having sex with a 15-year-old, that can be tricky for you, right?
Yeah, sure.
If you're, in that teenage years, those age differences are tricky. Wait 10 years and it won't be a thing. But in those moments, it's tricky. I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm talking about, people who have committed crimes against children, and that's a hard thing.
Yeah.
And I listen. I'm a survivor of that, so I get it. But at the same time, I'm one of these people that believes that people ought to be able to rehabilitate, find redemption, and live in community. It's hard because we know people that commit those kinds of crimes often, there's no curing that.
Yeah,
for a lot of it.
Yeah, I think parsing that out is difficult. I think one of the reasons is they've reached out to me. These advocacy groups, they've reached out to me
to have the conversation here.
Yeah, well, not here, but just for me to get involved, both on the prison ministry side and on family reentry side. And the truth is that although I'm completely empathetic, there's a limit to the bandwidth that anybody has in being able to tackle problems.
Yeah.
And this is a big one.
It is huge.
And I told them, I said, listen, I mean, I'm not a toe-in kind of guy. I'm not gonna just put my toe into that situation and not really have a clear path to how I can help instrument the change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And certainly, it's tough enough to advocate for people who've been convicted of white collar crimes. Not a lot of empathy and compassion for that.
I know. I mean, I've been called a couple of times to sit with people who have been convicted and about to serve time for crimes against children. And once my minister asked me could I do it? And I did. And I could feel the anger in me all the while I'm having this conversation with this person. But at the same time, the Christian in me is like, you know what? Let me help where I can help and refrain from harsh judgment. Well, it's hard. I don't like those positions.
When I parse through it ministerially, when I try to figure it out, I mean, Lynn and I have this kind of conversation all the time. Because there's when you first do work trying to help people generally, I'm just kind of putting it out there as a big topic. You can convince yourself that what you're doing is service for others.
Yeah.
But I found that the greatest service you can really do is for us to make ourselves vulnerable and invite people into our journey of transformation and change.
Mm-hmm.
Because by identifying with the way that we have been able to walk that path, it gives people permission and the ability and agency to do it themselves.
And I agree, because I get this all the time from people.
Mm-hmm.
How did you do it? How did you survive it? How did you? And now that's everything. That's the abuse. That's going to prison. That's transitioning from divorce. It's all of that.
And so, I have a bunch of people who've convicted of sex crimes have been referred to me over the years, and that's kind of the break where I need to be able to say to them, because I always have to put my social location on the table and usually my privilege on the table. I have to put those things on the table. And what I can't do easily is either identify with them or have them or see them identifying with me in terms of my redemption road.
Right. Right.
Yep. Because it's probably not there for them.
Yeah.
And so if I can't walk in their shoes and they can't walk in mine, there's a limited amount of ability that I have to be able to minister to them.
I mean, do we think we want to have this conversation on the air with someone?
Definitely. Oh yeah, I'll reach out.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good. Well, one of the things that we've learned.
I mean, you think if people was protesting us about Glenn E. Martin?
Listen. I love Glenn. I'm gonna put it out there. I love Glenn Martin. Okay, if not just for the leadership he showed in being a criminal justice advocate, but for his willingness to come on here and talk about difficult things. I mean, he didn't have to do it.
No. Listen, we're not holding anybody hostage.
No. I think you're holding me hostage.
We're not strong arming anybody to come up in here and sit in the round with us. We're not doing that. But I guess, he wasn't my favorite conversation.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
he wasn't my favorite. I think so many things went wrong with that conversation that I wish I could do over. I'd like to do it over. But I don't want to.
But that's always the case.
No, it's not. Because there are conversations we've had I never want to do over. Like, okay, I got what I wanted out of it. I think it was a great conversation. But I think for the first time since we were doing the show, I would like to have at him one more time.
Oh, really?
I would. To have a deeper conversation. Because I think it was a little too fluffy on a lot of levels.
Yeah, it's always a challenge to invite people on here, and we're not investigative journalists here. This is not Dateline or something.
No, and I know we're not, but I think if you introduce a particular statement, it ought to be unpacked.
Oh yeah.
I think it ought to be unpacked,
yeah.
and I think I have enough wherewithal to unpack a conversation that I find challenging or just raises my ire.
I definitely am self-critical.
Because listen, when Ganem came on, I really thought his conversation was going to be, I'm running for governor.
Yeah.
I really thought he was going to give me that political mumbo jumbo mess.
Yeah.
But he got in here and was like real as real could be.
Well, but here's
like, I'm gonna throw all the dice. I ain't got nothing to lose.
I feel like this is our retrospective show. We're going through all of our guests. The thing, I'm the co-chair of his mayor's reentry advisory board. So that's, I've said that at the time. So just I want to make sure that I'm disclosing that, fair disclosure. But I talked to him in advance, and I said to him, Mayor Ganem.
I know you were like, don't come on here with your BS.
I said, this is an opportunity.
Keep it real.
Yeah, this is an opportunity to speak to people in a way, in a safe space, because obviously we're both Babz and I are both felons, and to speak to people in a real way. And he shot right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
He did.
I know, and he was like real, and I was like, whoa, okay.
So
I think that probably was one of my favorite conversations.
Oh yeah, he was great.
Because I wasn't expecting that. Because I really was expecting political ease. I thought he's gonna come up here, and I'm running for governor, and this is why I'm running for governor. He's like, no, let me tell you, when I was in there doing this time, X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, whoa.
I'm trying to chew gum on air.
That's
Yep. You know what my favorite conversation was Robin Porter.
Yes, that's a given.
That's
my
favorite.
Given for me. Because I see her all the time, so we have these kinds of conversations all the time.
But for her to be able to express, so with such vulnerability and such eloquence, her feelings of shame and for her inability to save her child from the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And that's every Black mother's challenge every day. I mean, that's our challenge. And if they get in the system, we have to do everything we can to sort of make that experience worthwhile, and hopefully when they come out, be better on the other side.
Yeah.
And she's still in that struggle, right? She's still on that fence with her sons, trying to get him, to rise above what has happened to him and move forward and be successful.
A few days ago, Lynn and I had Larice Harvey over.
Yes, I saw the yoga warriors.
Yeah. She came to yoga with us.
I'm never coming to yoga. Just FYI.
But a few days earlier, she had lunch with us, and we love Larice
because she just moved back, right?
She moved back here from Ohio. Yeah. But 3 or 4 years ago, when I was on the board, when we were both on the board of directors of Community Partners in Action, Maureen Price Borland arranged for us to speak together at the Harriet Beecher Stowe House. And so the perspective was, a woman of color who grew up in the inner city and had those issues, and how she wound up going to prison for a crime, and my perspective of growing up in an affluent suburb, and yet leading to the same conclusion, or at least the same a life journey where I went to prison, and how we came back, and how we both became friends. And it was a very, very powerful presentation we gave that night, and the questions from the crowd were unbelievable. And so I definitely want to have Larice come on the show.
Oh, she should.
Oh, yeah, she definitely.
She should come on the show. I enjoy her.
But in sitting down with her and getting reminded of the reasons that she committed her crime, and they were fundamentally environmental issues. I mean, it was where she grew up and how she had to protect herself and protect her child and do all of that, and the things that Robin Porter talked about. Unfortunately, in this situation, it wound up in violence, but that could happen anywhere, and it was a reaction to violence. And she left the house, and Lynn and I have been doing justice work for decades now, right? And we looked at each other and said, it's sitting at our kitchen table. We know so little about what really goes on in the life of people in the inner city, and what motivates them, and how they have to survive, and what they have to do in order to survive. And it was just so powerful, and with the type of empathy that we were trying to show. I mean, we were showing empathy, but we didn't have. Even through all of this, there's not one day of my life that I could possibly say that I fully identify.
Yeah. And that's how you check your privilege. That's how you do it, Jeff. That's exactly how you do it. So, because I'll take issue with people, because I had this conversation with Andrew the other day, because we were at an exhibit at the School of Architecture, and he had made a statement that said something to the fact that that's why I don't get involved. I stand back, or I just, and I was like, it's like, I don't read the paper. I don't do, and I said, that's privilege that you can just,
you can
float through the world unaffected by other people's everyday practical lives. And I wasn't trying to offend him because I love Andrew. But, I think sometimes white folks forget there's other people other than white folks.
Well, yeah, but
on the planet.
But what's going on in this world a little bit is that with there being no more middle class, either you have real privilege or you're like everybody else.
Everybody else.
And I'm in everybody else now. I have a certain amount of privilege now, but not like the privilege I used to have. So
but the operative word is privilege.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because there's places you can go, Jeff. You don't even have to open your mouth. You don't have to say anything. You could go in and good-looking man, well-dressed, drive a nice car, and there will be you will be summed up based on that. You belong. Me?
Well, same thing. Just belong. Look.
Not so much.
This happened about a year ago. Scott Esdale, another one of our guests.
Yeah.
We just kind of shoot through another one of our guests, Scott Esdale, and the Connecticut NAACP.
Which I appreciate that they've taken on this mantle. Like, I appreciate that greatly.
Oh yeah, they have definitely become a force of criminal justice.
Yeah.
Reform in the state, as has the ACLU recently. Come reinvigorated. I got hats off to them. And so there was their annual meeting. The Connecticut NAACP has their annual meeting. I guess it's a weekend conference.
Yep.
Once a year. And about a year ago, it happened to be at the Marriott at the Trumbull Marriott. And they were going to give an award to about 100 people, overwhelmingly male, who were who did prison time and have been back, returned to society without recidivating for 5 years or more. So the room was packed, and the luncheon was packed, and they had these awards. And I was a recipient of I wasn't a speaker there. I was one of the people being given an award. And at the end, towards the end of the presentation, and all the speakers, most of whom are friends or people who've actually been on the show, they called everyone up one by one, and to stand in front, for a group photo. And Babz, now maybe it was because it was the NAACP. I don't know the answer to that. But there were 100 people standing in front for a group photo, and I was the only white guy. And
good.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, the point I'm making is that I was surprised. That I was surprised. I said, "Wow! Like there's not an appropriate amount of integration between the people who go through similar things, for people who have to learn from one another and have to really be in communication if we're ever going to solve some of these problems." And I know that where I lived in Greenwich for all those years, that there's no way that anybody there understands anything whatsoever about what happened in the life of these other 99 guys. Yeah. Not one thing.
That's true.
If I didn't, surely nobody in Greenwich does. But so, there's another pitch. I'll any day that anybody wants from Greenwich, if you want, I will pick you up at your house and drive you to Bridgeport and New Haven, and we can talk to the people who we need to learn from.
Yeah.
It's not like
it doesn't affect it. Well, they think it doesn't affect them.
It affects them big time.
They think it doesn't affect them, right? Yeah. They think that they are removed from that underbelly, but you're not. You're not. You're like one crime away from.
Not just crime, that it's just it's not just humanity. It's just we live in one world, and global warming is a physical manifestation of our failure to protect our our world.
Yeah,
And,
because we ain't got another planet to go to.
yeah, and the same is true.
Not that we know of.
And the same is true for all these issues. I mean, we're all in this little.
The world is a ghetto. Isn't that what War said?
Yeah, we're in this little sphere together. Or, we don't have much time. Let me just talk about who's coming here. Is that okay? Can I do that? Let me talk about who's coming in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
All right.
Give the people what they want.
On Friday, January 18th, we have Peter Henning, and he writes the White Collar Watch column for the New York Times.
I didn't even know there was such a thing.
If you subscribe to DealBook, what you can just it doesn't cost anything. You can they send you a newsletter every month, but in the New York Times and on NewYorkTimes.com, there's a column called White Collar Watch, which is probably the most influential, most well-read, and certainly incredibly well-written column about people and issues relating to white-collar crime, and it's even-handed. It can be incisive and difficult information, but it never kind of points fingers sensationally at the way that other columns do to try to sell newspapers. He's gifted, and he's become a friend, and he's going to be on the show January 18th, and he said to me, "What in the world would a professor from Indiana? How could I help your conversation?" And I said, "Well, Peter, you're at the hub. You know all the information throughout the country, and we want to learn from you. So I think that's a good one."
Is he calling in?
I think he's calling in.
Okay.
But we do have others who are coming here from some foreign places, like Jeffrey Abramowitz is coming from Philadelphia. He's the head of he's the executive director for reentry services for Jeb's Human Services, and he has, I don't know, 1,800 people. He's back from prison about 3 years himself,
and he's running something.
He has maybe 60 different programs he's running or something like that. Some huge number, and he's here, and he has a remarkable trajectory. A guy who was formerly an attorney, and he's in Philadelphia, and without doubt, Philadelphia is probably the most progressive place in the country where criminal justice programs and reform are happening. I mean, Philadelphia is right there, and so he speaks all over the country, and he's an inspiration, and he's also a member of our white collar support group.
Okay.
So he'll be here. Khalil Cumberbatch is going to be here on March 15th, and we know Khalil from Just Leadership USA.
There's a lot of people that came out of Just Leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, they just...
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, they're...
poured out of there.
Well, they train the leaders, so it's not surprising that the leaders...
I mean, really.
But Khalil went from Just Leadership to USA to the Fortune Society, where he became the head of, or the policy chief of the same branch that Glenn Martin was head of, a few years earlier, the David Rothenberg Center. Now he's with an organization as their chief strategist called New Yorkers United for Justice.
Okay.
So he's got a huge amount of national and New York perspective, and he's one of those guys who's on a plane every day. So we're really happy he's going to be here. And we have Greg Caruso coming, who is a professor in upstate New York, but he also runs this program in Scotland, which is called the Justice Without Retribution Network. And he's a philosopher. He's actually a professor of philosophy. And he's able to tie things together. I mean, you're going to love it, Babz, because, you've got that kind of mind. If you don't mind me saying. But he's written some papers and some books that are I'll send links to. I'll send links to in advance.
Okay.
And he's a remarkable guy, and I think that it's incumbent upon us to try to bring to our audience here to stretch a little bit.
Yeah. We got to do that.
Yeah, to stretch.
Because I think the problem I have, I don't even know if it's a problem, but I find that people are very unknowing about criminal justice. They just think commit a crime, go to jail. And there's so much more to this, layers and layers of this criminal justice world that I've learned so much just doing the show. Like I didn't know, I knew what was connected to my family and what was connected to my community. But beyond that, I didn't know. So it's been amazing to sort of learn and reach and connect to all these different kinds of layers of criminal justice.
Well, if you think that politics is local, involvement in the criminal justice system is like hyper local.
Yeah.
Because it's really everybody's anecdotal information,
mm-hmm.
and it's very hard from a ground roots level. It's very hard to form any kind of organization or any kind of movement at all, because no two people have the same relationship with the justice system.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have one person who's advocating for a certain element of it, say wrongful convictions or prosecutorial misconduct or whatever, and another person who's interested in the fact that their child been in solitary confinement for the last 30 days.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody brings into it, comes into it with how it affects them. But there is a very rich academic support, a rich research and academic world that isn't often brought into the media, which I think is a wonderful thing for us to start to dabble in, and we're doing that this year. And organizations that are really top down,
mm-hmm.
that are well funded and well thought out and well organized, like Just Leadership USA, but also many others, Catal apparently, and
mm-hmm.
and others, where it's just not a bunch of people who've been hurt or affected or and just getting themselves together and trying to do something, but it's thought out, and they've gone to funders, and they have a good plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the people who are on the in the forefront, who are actually in the trenches trying to instrument the change, but being able to do it because they have the funding and the support to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to give a voice to everybody.
And we're doing, I think we are. I've enjoyed this show. I look forward to doing it in the new year. Thank you, Paul Bass, and to the New Haven Independent staff for supporting the show, for the writing of the show, Tom Breen, Markeisha Ricks, Brian Slatery.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you to my favorite, Harry Droz, who keeps the lights on and keeps the gadgets whirling and twirling.
And he keeps us on frame for Facebook Live. So that's
so Harry, we appreciate all you do. Harry. Paul, thank you so much. Community Foundation, your generosity is incredible.
Oh yeah, we are out there. We are looking for sponsors right now. So anyone who's listening in, you want to not just get kudos, but contribute to the criminal justice conversation in a meaningful way here in Connecticut and throughout the country, please contact us. We want to hear from you.
Yeah. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, Jeff.
Happy New Year, Babz.
I'll be back. We'll be back on the 18th with a new guest.
Love you, Babz.
Love you too. Love you, Lynn. Love you, Andrew.
Yeah, bye, everybody.
Bye.